Coming up this week on the Digital Live Talk Show 929, it's our final show of the year, and we're going to have a bit of a recap, some of the things we enjoyed, didn't enjoy through the year, things we bought and got good value out of, some things we haven't, and we'll have a look forward a bit at 2024 as well, what we've got coming up. So we've got a good show for you this week, so let's get to our Christmas show. Richard, good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, and welcome to our Christmas show.
Yes, it's the end of the year.
End of the year. Now, I did put on my Christmas jumper before, but I took off because it is incredibly warm. So the horrible, ugly sweater from Microsoft from a few years ago, it's ugly. Yeah, but it is also very warm, and too warm for in here with 8 synthesizers all churning out heat. So.
Yeah, I always find those things quite annoying from a UK perspective, because they make a big thing about their Windows ugly sweater. And if you're based in the UK, you've got no chance. By the time it comes up, it's like, oh, it's on the Xbox store, but you've got to ship it from the US, and it's going to cost you £100. It's just, the whole thing is a bit mad, because I know the Bliss thing came out this year as well, and they obviously made a big thing about it. But again, if you're in the UK, it's really hard to get hold of it.
Yeah, it is kind of my go-to thing for any Christmas time. Somebody says, you wear a Christmas jumper. Oh God, so I throw it on, and it's better than some of the other ones I've seen. So yeah, it'll do me. So it is our Christmas show. We've got a couple of bits and pieces that let's talk about. Gary should be joining us soon as well, because we didn't do a prediction show last year because I think you were busy the first week of January, and then we never got round to doing it. So but I've got some other stuff we wanted to talk about. We've got some things to talk about for this year and for next year as well. When I did listen to the Christmas show, and it's funny, we talked about AI generated song lyrics.
I did
a little quiz, which I generated some. I use OpenAI ChatGPT to suggest some lyrics, but Pet Shop Boys and Phil Collins ones, and I gave you some of those against the real ones, and to see if you could spot them, and you could spot them. But it shows that actually, when I kind of thought we'd be talking AI sort of this year, but obviously we were talking about it last year as well.
We did well, yeah, exactly. We were ahead of the curve. Yeah,
we were. So anyway, that will probably come up in our predictions for this year and for next year as well. We've had no builds to talk about from Microsoft. I think we had one not last week before, but it was fairly minor.
I think they kind of closed down for the year, haven't they, really?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we didn't have any builds to talk about. I don't know if you've got a chance to listen to last week's show. To my mate Dave's Christmas, how he says Christmas lights.
Yeah. That sounds cool.
Yeah. And here's Gary now. So, good evening, Gary.
Good evening.
We've only just started. Good time.
Greetings from the charging, the local IoT charger. Well, just top it up before I get ahead.
This is where at some point Gary gets moved on from the car park for being suspicious, sat in a car talking to himself.
I've got a bone to pick with Ionity anyway. So.
I've got
a bone to pick with these Ionity chargers, which we can talk about later anyway.
Yeah, let's talk about chargers. So I really enjoyed talking to Dave last week on the show. That was really great, and he's still doing his performances every Friday and Saturday. He's been doing those, and I haven't actually checked. Over £1,000 he's raised for charity so far.
Amazing, fantastic.
Yeah, he's doing really well with that. So a lot of people are enjoying his lights. So I think we might have inspired him for next year, Gary. We talked about present sensors and things. So so I think he's thinking, I wonder what I could do with that for next year. I think Gary's frozen. Yeah, so that'd be sound quite interesting. So he's quite interested in the idea of present center. Oh yeah, so update on Dave's total is £1,753.
Wow, that's incredible. That's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. So he's done a great job there. So well done to Dave and Co for doing that. And hopefully we've planted some seeds of inspiration in his mind for next year. And links for everything that we talked about as well are on the show notes. Yeah, yeah. So I enjoyed seeing those. So, yeah. So as we didn't do our predictions last year, we can't look at how well we did. So I thought I'd delve in and we'll have a look at sort of your highs and lows for this year's and your predictions for next year. But before we go into all that, then, so let's talk charges. Then we haven't talked TVs for a while, so talk charges. So Richard, was your gripe first?
Oh, well, it's basically Ionity. Just in terms of the cost, because I drive an EV, and I usually charge at home. Occasionally, I have to charge on the move, or rather, out and about. And they've hit me with some massive bills. I mean, Gary, I don't know if you want to chime in here, but I've used them in a few places, and they charge a minimum sort of £40 connection charge, and then in theory they should refund what you don't use. And of course, you're almost never charged that much. I've never had a refund. They charge you £40, and then I have to chase them before they issue any kind of refund. I say, look, I've only used about £3 or £4 worth of electricity. I understand that the pre-authorization. Obviously, if you stay in a hotel, for example, you get pre-authorization. I understand why they're doing that. However, they also say very clearly they'll refund you what you don't use, and I'm having to chase them for that.
Yeah, you can go through the banks to chase them if they aren't refunding quickly enough. But
yeah,
it's a common practice, a common thing on everything. I mean, it's not just an EV thing. I've heard the same tale told from petrol pump pre-auths as well, which are even higher than EV pre-auths.
Oh, yeah, £100 plus, yeah.
And they're not released for weeks, which is ridiculous. I mean, they are pre-auth, so they're not actually taking money out of your account. The money's still yours.
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends, because again, if you use a credit card, as I've done, it appears. So it's appeared on my statement. I have to pay it, and I know that the next month it'll come off. But yeah, I'm down a substantial amount of cash, which I have to pay or incur interest, because I'm guessing they won't be paying interest for the month they wait before paying me back. So yeah, I'm disappointed by them. I'm disappointed, really disappointed.
Yeah, they shouldn't be doing that, and that's probably worth actually chat with the credit card company, because it's supposed to be a pre-authorization. It's not supposed to be a prepayment. I mean, there are ways around it. So if you've got a Kia, so you could use Kia's EV charging card.
Let's not go near that, shall we? I've had all kinds of problems with that too.
Well, it works for me most of the time, but the other thing is you could use Octopus and Electroverse. That gives you a discount on Ionity as a card contact, so that's to tap to pay as well. I mean, I think the worst way to use Ionity is through Ionity's own app, or the ad hoc payment system they have. The best way to use Ionity is on one of the subscriptions, but that only really works out well if you're using it a lot. I mean, my main gripe about Ionity is the reliability of the touchscreens and the card readers. I mean, I use this one quite regularly because I get a discount through the Kia side, so it's actually it's one of the cheaper chargers around here for me to use. And I can't remember a time when I've come here when the charger has either been able to, the touchscreen's actually worked, or the contactless reader has worked, and never when both of them are working. It's just so you can either touch the screen and actually get the card charged to the point where you can touch the reader and then it doesn't read the card, or the touchscreen doesn't respond at all. And in both cases, you end up using the app to start it, which does work, but it takes forever. So it's annoying that, and they just don't seem to be able to cope with wet weather. Anytime it's raining, they just the touchscreens just stop working.
Yeah.
Bit of a fatal flaw for you for Britain.
I mean, it has rained in the UK for about 3 months now, hasn't it? So
yes.
I mean, that's not the case for all chargers. A lot of other manufacturers' chargers work fine in the rain.
And again, to be fair to Ionity, I think I've only had 1 or 2 issues with the charger. It's normally always worked for me. It's not really, and I tend to use them when I need to use a DC to really blast from charging it into the car fast. And it has worked well. It's just I've just been disappointed with the pre-charging and how long it takes for that refund for that to turn into what it actually cost. I've got the receipt and things, it's all fine. it's just, I think you kind of wait, and then the credit card happens, you got to pay the bill. It's like, okay. And then next month, oh, you've got some credits. Well, that's a bit late now because I've had to pay that already.
Yeah, no, it is bad if they're doing that, and they shouldn't be doing that. That's actually against the credit card regulation. So I would talk to the credit card companies, and they may do something about it.
Yeah, it's annoying though. You shouldn't have to, should you? It's just
it should just work.
Yeah.
But it's all good fun. But I mean,
It is good fun.
the other thing about this particular charges network here, one of my pet gripes here is it's always full of an evening with delivery vans, and we have a lot of electric delivery vans around the area, and it's because they don't have any sort of depot-based charging. They're all independent vendors, and they have to charge them themselves, which means unless they've got home charging, which a lot of them don't, they end up clogging up these services, which isn't so good.
So you're in a car park full of you and delivery drivers at the moment.
Yeah, but, I mean,
Empty
everything
vans.
charges.
Yes.
Everything charges used here, and 3 out of the 6 are delivery vans. So, and there's people waiting for ages to get charges, and you think, well, okay, that it's fair enough that delivery vans have got to charge, but the problem is that the people who need to use the chargers here are on long journeys, and they need to charge probably far more desperately than at this services than the vans do, which could charge somewhere else in the city potentially, maybe on a slightly slower charger. But yeah, pet gripe.
It's all about the infrastructure, isn't it? That we're still adjusting, and still there's issues with the infrastructure. Getting people getting used to it.
Well, we are. I mean, the infrastructure is improving. It doesn't help that we have a lot of planning applications for chargers getting rejected at the moment. The latest one is that they've been rejected because they might that the EV drivers might cause antisocial behaviour, which is it's an interesting one. I don't think I've ever caused antisocial behaviour while I've been charging.
Yeah, you're and Richard and antisocial. Yeah, I've seen you've got Asbos on. I think you still are you still banned from city centres in the evening, Richard?
Oh, all of them actually, all of them. Yeah,
all of them. Yeah,
without exception. I go around there. I wear my Microsoft sweater. I shout out about Windows. Oh, crikey, yeah, banned. Yeah. That's it.
And then you start arguing with people over different flavors of Linux, and that's it.
I see a person using an iPhone. I'll go for them. That's it. Done.
That's it. But there are definitely improvements coming on, and I know one which will probably please Richard. There's a new Fastnet charger going in Kings Lynn.
Oh, good.
Sort of Fastnet hub, so that's quite nice to see, because Fastnet are one of the more reliable chargers, although slightly pricey, but they tend to work all the time, and they have canopies, which is nice for the British weather.
I guess the thing is you kind of need the infrastructure. The infrastructure needs to be built out much faster than it is at the moment. I mean, it's being built out, but if we're going to all be driving EVs, I mean, we're going to come up to a bit. We're going to talk about later on the show. For those that can't charge at home, this infrastructure needs to be there, and there's a lot of petrol cars out there which in the next 10, 15, 20 years are going to have to go away. And I just don't think the charging network at the moment is just can cope.
Yeah, it is, and it will grow and it will go fast. But the problem is, as I've mentioned a few times on my EV DriverNet show, the people investing at the moment are investing for a very short term, because battery technology is improving so much. I mean, there's a car just been released this week which will do 800 miles on a charge, and it's not a huge battery. It's just the battery technology improves that much, and that's going to become the norm. 800 miles, 1,000-mile charging, or very, very rapid charging, which means you're not actually going to need as much infrastructure in the long term. You will need it in the next 5 years, but perhaps not so much in the long term. Most journeys could be done on one single charge, and that's a challenge, especially if we do get solid state batteries eventually, which may come on to one of our later topics.
Yeah, I suppose that's the thing, is that you've got to do the infrastructure for now, but it's a rapidly changing technology, and trying to predict what infrastructure investments going to be in 10 years' time is quite difficult, because things are changing all the time.
What we really need to invest in, and it would be a lot cheaper, is a lot more destination charging. Every car park should have chargers on every space, basically,
Yeah.
and that would be doable. There we go.
But yeah, so that's on your wish list.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, that's a challenge, isn't it? I mean, again, we're going to talk funding, but I mean, if you look at, say, what's happening with the say parking meters in the UK, where a lot are being pulled out purely because they're on 2G or 3G networks, and they're disappearing in 10 years' time. And so rather than replace them, they're being pulled out. And I think that's a funding that the choice there is being driven by cost. And so expecting a council or parking provider to just stick a charging point in every space, someone's got to pay for that. I don't know where the funding for that comes from, because that would suit me down to the ground. I would love that, because I'd drive an EV, plug it in, park for an hour, plug in, grab 10, 15, 25 miles or whatever, slow charge. That'll get me home. Perfect.
Yeah. I just do. It can be done on a commercial basis. I mean, like our local park has just added a new car park, and I would say about a quarter of the spaces there have got charge points on them. They're paid for. They're in partnership with a commercial partner. The park itself didn't pay for them. They're taking a small cut off the charging fees, which is working out as quite a good commercial relationship for them. And they're all destination charges, and perfect sense for that. People come to visit the park. They spend a good half day there. You need to get as much charge as you put in as you use to get there. I think that's definitely the way to go. It would make a lot of sense in towns and cities, because it's a lot easier to power them. You're using a lot less power to do that. I mean, for every 350 kilowatt charger you're putting out there, you could potentially have 50 destination chargers. It's with the power grid, and you're not draining as much in one foul swoop, which makes it a lot less load on the power grid. So you're not having to have big chunks of chunky cables coming in and things. So yeah, there's a lot of but then you've got planning permission and way leaves and all sorts of things getting in the way again of actually doing anything decent in that respect. But it's a challenge.
Yeah,
it definitely is, and it'll be interesting to listen to this show next year when listen to it back and to see how things progressed in 2024.
I would say listen in 5 years' time, because 5 years' time it has got to have moved on much more than it has now. This time next year, I think we'll still be arguing. I think 5 years' time it has got to have moved on.
But in 5 years' time, the battery technology will have moved on so far. We will be having a different conversation.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, definitely. So, stay tuned, subscribe to the podcast, and you'll get it in 5 years' time. Find the answer. Which sounds crazy, but then we think we've done this 5 year thing. I don't know how many years are we doing this now, Gary? It's 2007, isn't it? So I think we've done 3 of those 5 years things. So it's doable. Now, like I said, we didn't do any predictions, but I did want to ask you some questions about sort of your year of tech this year. So I've kind of got some questions I wanted to ask you. So I really wanted to get your highs and lows tech-wise of the year, and maybe sort of some of the things you purchased you thought have been going. What's your top sort of purchase, or maybe the things that you purchased and haven't used quite as much as you thought you would. So start off with you, Richard. Relating to our previous topic, I think. What was the sort of what was the top thing you bought sort of tech-wise this year that you found got the most of and enjoyed using, etc.?
I guess there's 2 which are kind of at opposite ends of the cost spectrum. I have to say, my buying the Kia Niro EV it's been a superb purchase. I can't, especially now for the manual, that really helped. But it's been brilliant. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I don't have, I can charge by plugging it into my house, and it's been bizarre because it's little things like just doing lots of trips and things like taking the kid to and from school and stuff, because the car doesn't. There's no concept of putting fuel in it anymore, and I've noticed the difference. I've not noticed the difference in my electricity bill plugging the car in, but I have noticed the fact that I don't go to the garage anymore. to buy petrol because I just don't. So it's been quite astonishingly cheap, and it's possibly the most fun car I've ever owned because I mean, the thing about EVs, and everyone talks about the amount of torque and how they are like it's like a go-kart. It's incredible. You put your foot down and it just goes. It's and it's not particularly fast or whatever, and it's not a spectacularly performance vehicle, but it is like having a go-kart. It's incredibly you got to put your foot down and the thing just leaps away. And it's possibly been the most fun thing, the most exciting bit of tech I've ever bought. I'd say there's been issues with it, which I've resolved by actually reading the documentation to understand how it works. It's quite complicated. There's a lot of buttons to push. I've had a lot of problems with the charger that I have attached to my house, which is an Ohmie charger, and I'm dealing with them at the moment to try and work out what the issues are, because it kind of wakes up and goes to sleep when it shouldn't. So there's issues with that, which has been unfortunate. But the car itself has been fantastic. I don't, if you're in the market for an EV, I can't recommend the Kia Niro EV enough. It's just wonderful. The range is about 280 miles or so it will go anywhere that I need to go. As Gary said, if you've got destination charging, then you're fine. It's not a problem at all. The only time there's ever been an issue, as we said at the start of the show, is when I've had to stop somewhere and charge up, and I've used a number of third-party chargers, of which one is Ionity, and I've had issues with billing and things. I think a lot of that is down to teething problems, the curse of being, I guess, an early adopter, and these things should be resolved over time. Now, the cheapest thing I've bought that's been brilliant is I've bought a set of Shokz wireless headphones, and they're the bone conduction headset, because I do a lot of cycling. I do a lot of cycling, and I like to listen to podcasts, including this one, while biking along. But of course, you don't want over-ear headphones when you're cycling, because you need to hear things around you. And these are, I think, they're about £50 or so. You can get them from Amazon. They last in theory for 6 hours, but I've never run them down. And they're magnificent. I mean, yes, they're, if you're an audiophile, you're whinging about the sound quality, but the fact remains, they sound fine. I can hear everything, and I can still hear the world around me as well. And so that's probably, I would say, even more so than the Kia, has been the most life transforming thing, because it's meant that I can go for long, epic bike rides with this headset on. I can hear everything around me. I see lots of bikers wearing sort of earbud type things, and of course they block out the sound around you, whereas these, you can still hear what's happening around you. And also, it's like having a person talking next to you. So it's great. I've been really impressed. I'm really impressed with the Bluetooth, really impressed with battery life. It has literally just worked. So yeah, that'd be my two recommendations. One end, Kia Niro EV, superb. Other end, Shokz wireless headphones, the bone conduction sort.
Excellent. They sound good. So what about you, Gary? What's been good for you purchase wise?
Well, I think something I got probably actually slightly over a year ago was the DJI Mavic, the DJI Mini 3 drone, which has been brilliant. I've used that a lot in my podcast, in my video making, YouTube making. And I never really got why people spent the extra money on DJIs, and we got given it as a present, and then realised, this is somewhat a complete step up from what I've been used to with drones. The only problem is you don't really have to fly it. So if you're actually someone who likes flying, it takes something away, but it's a great camera platform. It is amazing as something to do camera work.
Yeah, I've seen some of those. Some of the pictures from it. It looks really impressive, and it has got that sort of polished. Right, TV company production type thing, isn't it? Look to it, yes. Yeah. I think,
but really amazing. So that's been really good. Now I'm gonna have to leave you for 2 minutes, because I just need to move my car. So I'll be back on it in.
Okay. So the van driver wants to take his space. Yeah.
As a Kia here. I move as soon as I got to 90%. So I'm on 90% now, so I'll move and let people get a space. Yes.
Oh, you see, etiquette. That's charging etiquette. Some people would just sit there and and
It's true,
take
actually.
it up.
Although,
Yeah.
although some chargers will, if you stay more than 2-3 hours, they'll start to charge you more. I've noticed that.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah,
I suppose that's
just
fair
some-
enough. It's a way of discouraging people from hogging them.
Well, exactly. I mean, that is fair enough. I mean, there's a lot of places where they say, can you please move on once your car's charged? Because but the problem with that is say if you're parking overnight somewhere on the street, you can't really move your car after 3 or 4 hours because it's there overnight. So yeah, I mean, this is one of the kind of EV things that I think is going to be an issue for many people, is the off-street charging. I see, Gary's obviously there moving his car around now, but I do think it's going to be a problem. If you haven't got the ability to charge off street, that's going to be a challenge going forwards.
Yeah.
So, do you want to know what my worst bit of tech is this year?
Go on.
Well, it's got to be the Windows and ARM box. which
Right. Yes.
I bought it at the end of last year,
Mm.
and I've tried to use it this year a lot. I've really tried hard this year to use it as my main machine, and it got so bad I had to switch back to the iMac because it just unstable, just slow, things not working properly, the clock always being wrong. And I'd say it's been the most disappointing bit of tech I've had, because I was very optimistic about Windows and ARM,
Yeah.
and I know lots of people are, but this has just been, I mean, it's been terrible. And I think to have it for over a year and it's still basically not work properly or not be useful as a main machine is not a good sign.
No, it's not. And we'll talk about sort of stuff for next year as well. And I think Windows ARM still comes back into it. But yeah, it's disappointing that let's let Gary back in. It is disappointing that a major thing like Windows ARM, Microsoft seems to have just done nothing with it. I believe there are plans for it for next year.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I mean certainly. I mean, next year we'll have to mention Windows 12 at some point. But I mean, there's the new Snapdragon CPUs which are out, which I think will help matters. And I think there'll be a Windows and ARM optimized for those new chips, and that will improve things. But the fact remains, my existing Windows and ARM machines, they're terrible. I mean, I think that's not too strong a word. I've been very disappointed. They are terrible. And when you bought this machine and you kind of believe the hype, you think, okay, I'm going to go for this. I'm going to try it out. And I tried to use it for a few months, and it was just, everything was either slow or clunky or simply crashed a lot. And it's just disappointing, really.
Mm. Now, one of the questions I was going to ask you, what's your tech highs and tech lows of the year? So would you put that on your list of tech lows?
Yeah, I'd say Windows and ARM definitely tech low.
Yeah. And then and tech highs, what would you say? It's your EV, or was it something else?
Tech high. Ooh, I mean, yeah, EV is cool. That's maybe a bit. I really like those headphones.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Things that have changed my life. It's not cost a lot of money, and it has actually properly. I mean, I like the Raspberry Pi 5, but I'm with Gary, and I'm not quite sure who's it for now. But yeah, I'd say those bone conductive headphones have really made a massive difference to my life, and I've been impressed just how well they just worked out of the box.
Yeah. Now, Gary, some of you tech highs and tech lows for 2023.
Yeah, I mean, tech highs, I think some of the new battery tech we're starting to see coming through. So the semi-solid state batteries, which are going to push the ranges up of cars, and whether we actually see, potentially next year we could see 1500 mile range batteries in cars. I doubt we will. I think perhaps we shouldn't actually. I mean, there's obviously been a push for longer ranges, but it would actually probably be better to actually have a car with a 200-300 mile range using one of these batteries, but a much smaller battery, cheaper, and bring the cost down. So, but the potential is definitely there, and I think that there's a lot of battery technologies coming out. I think we'll start seeing some amazing battery technology in phones this year. We'll start to see some real solid state stuff coming in. I mean, it's also my most disappointing technology of the year as well, because the solid state stuff should have been here by now. there's a lot of reasons probably why solid state batteries haven't quite made it to market yet. They are difficult to produce in quantities, and there's a lot of other things around them. But you also have to question when some of the biggest investors or the biggest companies which were producing solid state batteries were purchased by some of the legacy auto manufacturers, people like Toyota. And Toyota have been saying that solid state EV will be coming to market next year for about the last 5 years, and it never seems to actually turn up. And it's like a certain that's held back the solid state development, because that is definitely the way we should have been going with EV batteries. But particularly, even without EV batteries, small scale production of solid state batteries would be superb for mobile devices. I mean, you'd be talking about a phone which could charge in a couple of minutes and last 5 or 6 days. It'll be a total game changer for the charging of things like that. Watches, you could have a decent screened watch with a battery in which could last a month and actually be powered on all the time, unlike the current situation where we're constantly trying to battery save with watches.
Mine's on charger right now. Yeah,
as is mine. So it's and mine lasts 15 days, which is great, but it does that at the cost of not having some of the technology which is in some other watches. And all sorts of other things like wearables generally. Once you get solid state batteries, glasses. I mean, obviously, one of the things we're starting to see a lot of this year, it's the new trend is the smart glasses with embedded screens in them. But one of the big problems for them is the battery life. They tend to only last an hour to 2 hours. Otherwise, you end up having to carry a battery pack with them, or whereas with a solid state battery, the battery the glasses could be the battery. They could be built out like the battery material. The frame could be that, and you could then last a lot longer. So solid state is definitely a very interesting technology. I think it's also a very disappointing technology in terms of how far it's come along in the last 5 years. It would have been 5 years ago. It probably would have been my predictions of something we would have seen by now, and definitely hasn't happened.
And in terms of tech purchases, what's the thing you've sort of bought that you've enjoyed the most or got the most out of?
Most of it had been the drone, which I was talking about.
Oh, yes, you mentioned about that, yeah. And tech lows in terms of what you've bought?
Tech lows, that's actually a tricky one. I mean, I've been disappointed in some of the smart homes kit I've had recently, the reliability of it. I mean, certainly the one, I guess one of the most disappointing ones, because it was such a good thing to start with, was that Aqara FP2 presence sensor I talked about a few months back, the one which can sort of detect multiple people in the room and tell you where they are. And it was brilliant the first couple of days I used it. Then it got a software firmware update, and it's been useless ever since. It really has not worked as well. And the ghosting on that, and I think that's been very disappointing, especially at the price, because that's around about sort of the £80 mark. And as I mentioned last week, that there are now sensors out there which do a similar thing, not quite as clever, but for a lot cheaper money, a lot less than 20 quid. So I think that's definitely one of my disappointing purchases, because that was a lot of money for what it was, and I had a very specific task for it, and it was working fine doing it to start with. Which is basically zone lighting. The idea you can walk into an area and it knows someone's standing in that area, so it turns the light on in that area only. So the typical nighttime routine where you want someone walks out of bed and because you don't want all the lights come on, you want to sort of follow me lighting. And particularly in the kitchen, we want this sort of island lighting coming on, and it could do it really, really well. And it could even do it if there were two people down. You could be standing on different parts of the kitchen. You could just turn the lights on in that particular area. So someone might be over by the cooker, and it would just turn the light on there, or someone might be over. I'd see it and turn the light on that post. But it doesn't work now anyway, because it still detects and it knows where people are. The problem is it still thinks they're there after they've left. And it got better with a recent firmware update, but it hasn't really got back to how it was initially. So if something works, don't fix it.
That's it. Well, in terms of my stuff, in terms of a tech low, I guess it's got to be the general push away from consumers from Microsoft side, and I think probably the end of the Windows Insider program, MVP program, which is a part of that as well. I think he's sort of been my low. I'm hoping that Microsoft can sort of get back to consumers next year, but it doesn't appear to be the general trend. And they have good reasons for it, but just as an enthusiast, I do think it's a shame that that consumers aren't being addressed in the same way, like with the Surface Go. The Surface Go 4, they kind of ignored consumers on that. And I know the enterprise is where the money is and everything else, and AI, but I still would like to see a bit of a Windows 8 style consumer push, but Vista style consumer push. But I don't think we're ever going to see that now. But yeah, that's been one of the lows. I guess I was trying to think of tech guys. I couldn't think of anything too much apart from getting my 8mm film converted to digital, which is not something particularly a new technology, but it was something that I did this year, and those films were great. So
that was definitely a real high.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm watching those videos you converted as well.
Yeah. So I think that was the highs as well. In terms of machines, things that I bought, well, the Surface Go will probably be the thing that I waited the longest for, and eventually got. And I did take it with me when I travelled last month, and it was great. It did exactly what I want, and I use it for meetings, and I'm going to do another follow-up video. So because I really like the Surface Go. It's not for everybody, it's very much for my use case, but this is sort of my go-to device for anything on the evening, because I just flip the keyboard around, do a bit of browsing. If I want to do a blog post, it's great for doing that as well. If I want to do something a bit more intensive or whatever, maybe I'll bring out the Laptop Go. But yeah, the Surface Go is good for that. So it was either that, the Modwave synth that I actually got that in December, so last year, so that it technically counts, but I've got way more value out of that than I thought I would. It was something I thought it would be an interesting synth that would give me a bit of a different sound, but it's turned out to be something that I could really get into and program. It's a synth that has so many different things you can do with it that you can now actually use it to create emulations of other synths, and I've really got into doing the programming of it, so more than any other synth I've had, really. So it's that age-old thing that if you really invest your time into something that you have bought, then you actually can get some good results out of it, and I think that's probably what I found with that. So yeah, that's what I've really enjoyed. And that's the other thing on the low side, not really negative, but not for me, is I found some of the cloud music software subscriptions, the Roland Cloud, not as inspiring as I thought they would be. So the Roland One, you've got all these vintage synths on there that they've modelled, and I just can't seem to get into them in the same way as I can with a physical synth. I've got some other virtual ones, some of the Korg ones, which I do use. But there's just something about that. There's not that hands-on, that you get with them. So again, I think if you're a music producer, they'd be great. You get a job done, move on to your next task. But for a hobbyist or someone like me who just enjoys programming them and everything else, it's not quite the same. I don't know why, but it's not. So, and it's not actually. I got the offer was £50 for the first 3 months, and then I think I'm going to cancel it because from then on it's like £10 or £20 a month or whatever. It's just not worth it for me. But yeah, so those are you can't beat hands-on physical controls. I guess that's what I've found. Right, let's have a look now at 2024. Just to round up the year of shows. Richard, what do you think is going to be or what do you think will be the big talking point next year in our world?
The AI bubble is going to burst.
Oh, we heard it here now. I can't. This is going to be a clip I might be bringing out next year.
It's got to happen. It's. I mean, the hype is such that. I mean, AI or the let's be clear here. I mean, generative AI it's a fantastic tool. Don't get me wrong; it's really useful. But I think that it's been hyped up to the point, and the kind of characters I'm seeing hyping it, it's the same kind of hype I saw around Web3 and crypto and all these things. And I think there was it's a great tool. It's a really useful tool, but I'm starting to get concerned, and have been over the last few months, that actually, people are hyping it because it's almost the only way to get funding in now for venture capitalists, is to say, oh, we've got AI. AI is here, AI is there. It's like the magical AI fairy dust gets sprinkled everywhere. And so my concern is that bubble. I mean, it will burst. It's got to burst at some point. My worry is what it's going to take with it when it goes.
Yeah. And when you see some companies very heavily invested in it, like Microsoft,
and again, I can't fault what Microsoft have done. I'm just concerned about about people's expectations have been raised so high that this is. I mean, again, the phrase is it's spicy autocomplete. It's a clever assistant. It's helpful, but it's an assistant. It's not intelligence. So anyway, carry on, Gary.
I think trading standards should have been involved when everybody started calling it artificial intelligence, because it's not intelligence. It's machine learning. It's not intelligence.
Exactly.
That's something I'll put my head on and go and die under or whatever. But he's but I mean, you're right. It's really clever. And actually, I should mention that one of the best bits of AI technology that Microsoft have done ever, I think, just got launched on Android, which is the Seeing AI program. I think you may have seen this before. It's the written by Saqib Shaikh, developed by Saqib Shaikh, who's one of a Microsoft employee who's blind. And he basically came up with the idea to try and help him navigate his world. And it's basically an application you can have for your phone, which you point at things, and it tells you what the world around you's got in it. So which people are around you. It's really good with money. It can identify notes, which is one of the biggest problems for blind people. I know some of the poorly sighted friend of mine was badly ripped off by her local grocer, who was giving her the wrong change back every time because she couldn't see what the notes were. Unfortunately, something which is quite common. So this can sort of help with all that, and that is a really good use of machine learning. It is only machine learning, though. I mean, I've seen how it's all put together, and it literally is just you tell the machine this is a £5 note, and you tell it enough times different versions of the £5 note, it learns what a £5 note looks like, and what it doesn't look like. But that's a really good piece of technology, and a really good piece of a good way of using artificial intelligence, as it's called. I'll argue against that today, aren't I?
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting what happens with the rumors are whatever the next version of Microsoft is going to be called, and I was thinking Windows 12, but I'm kind of hearing that maybe it isn't going to be Windows 12, maybe they'll just have it as another Windows 11, but it's going to be AI shell, a lot of AI integration with the shell. And if the bubble bursts, then Microsoft have built all that in. Are we going to see future versions of Windows with it all being stripped back out again, just like many of the features we saw added into various versions of Windows and they've been taken back out again? Is it going to be another sort of fad thing?
No, yes. I don't think so, because Microsoft's been quite careful in how they've marketed this. That they talk about Copilot and things, and it is a Copilot. I think that's actually a good word to use to describe it. So I think my concern is Microsoft may get caught up in when the bubble bursts, they might get the phrase AI might become toxic, and that could be bad for Microsoft, which would be a shame, because I think they're doing some good work. I just think the marketing teams need to be reined in just a bit, and as Gary says, perhaps trading standards called on them as well. But on the whole, no. I mean, Windows 12 is an interesting thing because it is going to be very heavily AI focused. I think certainly my opinion about Windows 12 is Microsoft needs to do something about the smell of Windows 11, because Windows 11 is a great operating system. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just had these bizarre hardware requirements put in place that don't merit what you actually get. So you have to buy a whole new PC, a whole new bit of kit to run with Windows 11, and there's not that much benefit. However, I mean, I know hardware vendors are very keen to sort of sell, chips and things that are optimized for AI type applications, or other, as Gary says, machine learning applications. And if Windows 12 leverages those, that could be the push to get people to actually buy new hardware, because it's Windows 12 has got this magical desktop thing, or these wonderful tools, or these Windows search finally actually works, as opposed to where it's been for the last 20 years, thanks to the magic of generative AI. And so, yes, perhaps it's worthwhile investing in new hardware now, because there is a reason to jump. Whereas going to Windows 11, there wasn't that same justification to make the jump to the new OS and buy new hardware. When Windows 10, it's not. I mean, I like Windows 11. I use it myself. It's perfectly adequate. However, for a lot of people using Windows 10 on old hardware, you're probably not going to want to upgrade, are you? There's a forecast. Do you think Microsoft will blink about the end of support?
Yes, I think they'll extend the support. I don't think they'll drop the user requirements, also the hardware requirements for Windows 11. So you won't get Windows 11, but they may extend that. Windows updates and things like that may get an extension. And also I was sort of hearing that wherever the next version is of Windows with the AI features, it's going to require some neural processor, and we may only get certain devices, so that makes another fragmentation. So we get a version of Windows that can support the neural processing with certain chips, and a version of Windows that doesn't have it, and then versions of Windows that aren't on supported hardware. So we've got Windows 10, Windows 11, Windows Next. It's going to be a bit of fragmentation, and I don't think that's necessarily healthy either.
But I guess we had that with Vista, where some versions of depending on your hardware, you could use Aero or not use Aero.
Yeah, and that worked out really well for Vista in the end.
Yeah, okay, that was a bad example.
Yeah, yeah. So in terms of my guess, I think is I don't think we'll see Windows 12. I think we'll have just an update to Windows 11. I'd like to see it as Windows 12 and it'd be a whole new shiny thing that we can do videos on and talk about on the show. But I suspect it'll be an update to Windows 11 that includes these capabilities, and maybe only certain devices get all these capabilities that have got the correct processor, and including the ARM one. I think we'll see Microsoft have another go at ARM next year. Gary, what do you think? What are we going to have Windows 12 next year?
I doubt it. I think it'll either be a completely new branding, Copilot for desktop, or it'll be Windows 11, or just Windows. I think they may even drop the Windows 11. I think they may just become Windows and Windows as a service.
Azure desktop.
Yeah, Azure desktop. That does exist. I think the interesting thing is, what have we actually stopped talking about recently? Because if we were hosting this a couple of years ago, we'd have all been talking about quantum computing, and that seems to have just gone really quiet. And yet it hasn't really gone quiet. There's been some really major breakthroughs in that in the last year. And we're starting to see some possibilities that actually coming, and that coupled with machine learning does actually have some interesting potential. Because if you can machine learn, if you can have something which can follow every single path and let the machine learn the results of every single path, you get something close to our intelligence. That's basically how our neural networks work. And maybe we will get proper artificial intelligence somewhere down the line if we get the combination of the two. But I don't think that'll be next year. It may be a few years off still.
Yeah. Well, we have enough trouble handling intelligence, never mind artificial intelligence.
But the one thing I think will come out next year is some pretty big medical breakthroughs through the research which is going on with the quantum computing side of the world at the moment, and coupled with some of the machine learning stuff. I think we're going to see some pretty major drug breakthroughs, things which with a lot less side effects but more targeted. Targeted medicine is the way is the buzzword at the moment in that sphere, and I think that's definitely going to see some things around that. Maybe near the end of the year, because there's still a lot to do on it, and there's all sorts of clinical trials and things there. But the whole COVID-19 stuff focus the minds on a lot of research around this, and we've got a lot of interesting new drugs and things coming out, which will probably be the biggest impact on all our lives.
Yeah, well, that would be something that good would come out of it. So yeah, that would be good to have. So I think next year when we listen to this, back to this bit, we'll see how we got on with our predictions. A couple of other bits I want to mention. Richard, this is going to be your last show with us for a little bit, I think.
Yes, it is. Yeah, unfortunately, I've got a number of other commitments, and unfortunately, this is. And in many ways, do you remember when Jason disappeared? Kind of similar kind of thing in that I'm finding tech a bit. Certainly, I've been disappointed last year with Microsoft and a lot of consumer tech. So. I'm aware that I'm starting to whinge a bit as well. So,
yeah.
I think I need a break for a little while and just focus. Although I am looking forward to playing with my Raspberry Pi 5 when my actual model arrives, as opposed to the review sample.
Well, it's good because what I was going to do is every now and again I'll badger you to rejoin us when you can, and because it wouldn't be the same without Richard's rants.
Well, I'll obviously be looking forward to the next release of Dixon Music. So, and I'm still waiting for that Sega inspired track.
Oh yes, yeah, you're right. I did actually listen to the Outrun track the other day, actually. Yeah, so it's on my list of things.
Jolly good. Well, I should look forward to the. I mean, I'm thinking Magical Sound Shower, perhaps, or Passing Breeze. One of those. Yeah, be good.
Yeah, that's good. There was something else I was going to. I came across. I was on iPlayer, and this is not a new show, but have you did you ever catch a program in 2005, I think it was, that Peter Sabenovich, correct his name, the comedian actor, did, called Look Around You?
I did. That's a superb show. I recommend it.
Yes, yeah. So that's my recommendation for this week. If you haven't seen that, it's not new. It's from 2005, but I have missed it the first time around, but caught it on iPlayer when I think it ended up on my recommendation somehow, which is a bit of machine learning. Gave me the right recommendation there.
And at this point, I have to tell you an anecdote about how I almost got thrown out of the airport lounge in Barcelona, thanks to Peter Serafinowicz. Because he also does a very good impression of Terry Wogan, late UKD DJ, and he did a thing called Wogan Pirate Radio, which is basically every single awful pirate radio you can imagine, except voiced by Terry Wogan. And so I found it hilarious. So yeah, so basically have the Wogan commenting, doing all the various sort of shout out to my mates down the gym type thing, with a really hardcore dubstep in the background. And so I was in the lounge listening to that on my headphones, having a great time. Couldn't quite hear it. Turned up a bit louder. Still couldn't hear it. A bit louder still. Still couldn't quite hear it. And then I was tapped on the shoulder, and it transpired my headphones weren't plugged into the laptop. So I was booming out Pirate Wogan Radio across the whole lounge, and yeah, I was not exactly asked to leave, but asked to perhaps just turn it down a bit. So,
so my other Wogan fact, which I love this one. I was out in Finland and listened to one of the local radio stations in Finnish, and the guy sounded just like Terry Wogan. I don't. Does he know Finnish? Has he come across? Got Irish accent doing this? What it turned out was that this was quite common across the whole of Scandinavia, that DJs used Wogan's accent because he was seen as being one of the great DJs, and they all copied him. So everywhere
he was one of the great DJs, definitely.
One of the great DJs, definitely. And yeah, so they throughout Scandinavia, there were people who sounded like who were mimicking Terry Wogan to do their broadcast.
Excellent.
Excellent. And by the way, if anybody's not seen that show, Look Around You. There's two series. First one is a take of those BBC educational programs in the late 70s, early 80s that you would get if you were a certain age. You went to school and the teacher dragged the TV into this classroom, and you got to watch those. So I think it was called programs for schools or something. And the second one is a Tomorrow's World type program, which as a big fan of Tomorrow's World, I thought it was great. So I very cleverly done. I really enjoyed that. But so yeah, I missed it in 2005, but it's definitely worth checking out. It's on iPlayer, and it just made me think. I really missed Tomorrow's World. I'd love to see that show come back, but it's something that I think lots of people talked about over the years, isn't it? But it never seems to come back. But I would love to see that one come back.
It did always get itself back in about 2009. It got very close to being commissioned, I understand, but then there were some issues around copyright and people who owned some, who bought some of the rights from BBC didn't want to give it back or something. I don't know the full details, but I may be talking rubbish, but that's what I heard.
and maybe, yeah, and it points to almost what you were saying there, Richard, is that the consumer tech has become so vast but quite steady that there isn't you couldn't fit it into a weekly hour live TV format show to cover it. But it's a shame, but I don't think perhaps it's a different era now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think you probably could, as Gary says, that you kind of want a show to bring up things like quantum, EV battery enhancement, solid state batteries. I think there's a lot you could feed in. You could fit into half an hour to an hour show, perhaps once a week or once a month. I mean, I think you could do it very easily. I mean, Radio 4 has a number of good shows like Inside Science and what have you, which do similar things. So I think you could definitely do that. I mean, obviously, when we think back of the awful awful now computers and things and their attempts to sort of show off what became the internet, but I think there's real potential, and I would like to see Tomorrow's World come back. I would like to see that. I'd watch that.
Yeah, so would I. So there you go. That's our Christmas hope for is that BBC can bring back Tomorrow's World. Yeah, I'd like to see that one. Right, well, I think that's just about everything we've got time for this week and this year. So we've had a busy old year. We only had a few weeks off. So Richard, we're definitely going to miss you on the show, but like I said, we're not going to let you go completely. I'm going to still keep nagging you every now and again to get you back on the show. Don't worry.
Excellent. I look forward to it.
Yeah,
I look forward to it, and best of luck. And I look forward to listening to this show and to more tunes and hearing more about EVs.
Yes, that's right. Gary, we need to make sure we include things each week just to really wind up Richard. So while he's listening to the show on his bike with his bone conducting earphones.
Richard rants on his bike.
Yeah. Yes.
Exactly.
And so Rich, where can we find you if anyone wants to keep following you?
Yeah, you can find me on Mastodon and Blue Sky, most social places except for X. Just look up Richard Speed and you'll find me. Yeah,
and Gary, where can we find you?
You can find me at Gary WMA. That's Gary 2 R's on everything, just about.
Excellent. I'm at I.S. Dixon, and make sure you check out our YouTube channel. I want to start pushing those subscriber numbers now. Nearly at 10,000. So so have a great Christmas, everybody. We'll be back with a show in the first week of the new year, and then the week after that I think we're gonna have a special show as well, which I'm just planning. So have a great Christmas, and we'll see you next year.
Take care.
Cheerio.